So, gaan voort, my vriend. Ek is
Okay,
on, ja,
so what, as I alluded to a previous recording, tourism in our country has got such huge potential. And I really admire what Graham Addison is actually doing, because he is empowering people to be able to guide tourists, and hopefully it will be foreign tourists, because then we bring foreign money into our country. But even if it's local tourism as well, so he's empowering people from a community with the skills and the knowledge to actually guide people and to earn an income and bring more people to that community. So as I sat there and I listened to him, he spoke about it so well that for a moment I thought, let me become a tour guide. But then I decided there's so many other things I want to do as well, and so I'd rather follow some good tour guides. And then he even played a small little video, which I'll see if I can find, and I'll forward it to you. And it's from a guy called, I think it's Christian Jantjies or something like that. He's the one that took them to Pinnacle Point Cave. I think B13 or C13 or something like that. And one of the profound statements that this guy made, and I'm sorry that I forgot his name, but I'm sure somewhere either name or surname there's a Yankees in. This guy made such a profound statement that it's been rattling in my head since. And the statement was, in the olden days, we used to live in nature. So we could see, luister hier, die bome is besig om te vrek. So there's a water problem, that's een of ander probleem. But today we live on nature. And we've got flipping plastic bags blowing all over the show. And the animals are dying with tins over their heads and all kinds of stuff. And so, but we've got the four walls around us. We don't see that. So education and empowerment of local communities, and I see all that in Graham Addison's work. And because he's so passionate about what he does, like us, he told me, he gets up like 3 o'clock in the morning and writes his stuff up. So he's a prolific writer. He's actually busy researching a book that he wants to publish. That's basically in the line of geology. So, but yes, he's doing wonderful work.
okay. But maybe now is a good time to explain a little bit about stromatolites. You picked up a piece literally outside of my house on the beach. How yeah, how?
Okay, see, I'm not a stromatolite expert, but being a geologist, I know the broad strokes. And so when I went through a couple of research papers, I'm actually quite surprised that I picked that piece up there close to Gordon's Bay. So obviously it's further spread than what I've previously realized or what I've read up about. So maybe there are papers out there that explain closer to Cape Town. But as far as I know, it's between PE and like Storms River mouth, that small little section of coast. And these happen, it doesn't actually happen underwater in our case. In the South African case, so Shark Bay in Australia is different. Their stromatolites are more like a column, and they grow in high salinity water. by us, it's where the groundwater seeps into shallow seawater ponds. So obviously that makes it less saline, and the water temperature is slightly higher as well, than the normal sea. So our South African stromatolites are formed in conditions of less salinity and higher water temperatures. And the basic how it happens is now in, I'd say, grade 2 or 3 terms, is through photosynthesis. In the water there's carbon dioxide and there's obviously water, CO2 and H2O. And so through photosynthesis, the carbon gets taken out and it becomes food for the plants. So the plants build body from that carbon, and it releases oxygen, O2. And that chemical process actually pushes the pH up. And by pushing the pH up, it allows the calcium carbonate to settle. And that's where the stromatolites actually come from, is as a result of the photosynthesis that takes place at a higher level, and then the calcium carbonate settling out at a later stage.
But Thomas, so the current evolvement of stromatolites in South Africa, which we now know is, it's happening currently as well. But let's take, for instance, what we used to call the Transvaal rocks. Is the method of formation different or just longer? I'm thinking of all the. I've looked at, again. You were there with me and Runel at Thabazimbi mine. Were those stromatolites formed under completely different situations, or
you see, at that time the atmosphere was completely different. So obviously it would just have been, because if you look at the photos of around Kinney Bay Seaview area, you can see multicellular algae. Now, those algae wouldn't have existed 2,000 million years ago, because at that stage there was much less oxygen. And the reason we know that there was much less oxygen is all the iron ore over there. Because if the atmosphere was full of oxygen, that hematite would never have formed. It would have formed, but it would have been rust. It would have been FeO2 instead of just plain iron oxide. So although the basic principles are the same, the atmospheric conditions would have been different, and that would have made that the macrobiology would have been different to what it is now. I'm not too sure if that answers your question.
No, it does. It certainly do. Again, these are simple questions, and I don't know how many people have these questions, but I do, and I think, I'm sorry, it makes it a valid question.
No, of course. I always say, and I know it's become a cliche, but there is no dumb questions. It's only through questions that we can learn. And I mean, so often we we might have knowledge internalized inside ourselves, but if we don't even ask ourselves questions, we don't even know we've got that knowledge.
True. But my friend, once again, we are running out of time. We will speak again.
Yes. No, and as always, lovely chatting to you, my friend Leon. And until the next time,
Until the next time, goodbye.
goodbye.